welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to do my late July wrap-up. This is the background that I'm going with. I do have my air conditioner above, so if you hear that background noise, I'm sorry. My fridge also makes some noise, I'm sorry. But this is my new condo. This is the filming setup for at least right now before I purchase and put my new bookshelves up. But yeah, I hope this is okay, and if in editing the sound sucks, I'm gonna be livid, but don't tell me about it because I probably already noticed. So like with every monthly wrap up, we're just gonna go into some statistics. This month I read 17 books, which is crazy. And that comes out to a total of 5,561 pages, which is about 179 pages per day. Where I got this time while I was shopping for furniture and moving things in, I have no idea. In regards to star ratings, we have 3 5-star reads, which is fantastic. I don't think I've had a month this year where I've had more than 1 5-star. So 8 books were 4 stars, which is equally as good. 6 books were 3 stars, and then I have 0 2 stars and 0 1 stars, which is an average of 3.85, which is fucking fantastic. I had such a great reading month. Then we'll go into some statistics about the books. So in regards to the gender of the authors, I had 6 female authors, 10 male authors, but I think 4 of those are just Brandon Sanderson. So really, I have 6 and 6. And then I had 1 book written by a non-binary author. In regards to the book's audience, 12 books were adult and 5 books are marketed towards the YA audience. And then just in terms of format of how I read the book, 3 of the books were audiobooks, 2 of them were ebooks, and 12 of them were physical books. So now let's get into the reviews. So the first 6 books I read in the month of July fell for the video game-a-thon. This was a readathon I hosted with my friend Danny over at Current Chapter. And during that 7-day readathon, I read 6 books. The first of which was Life is Strange Volume 1. This is written by Emma Viacelli and illustrated by Claudia Leonardi and Andrea Izzo. So this is a 100% completely biased 5-star read, and I honestly will hear no arguments at this time. This graphic novel absolutely had the vibes of the game, which reminds me that I need to talk about what this is about. This is the sequel to the video game that came out from Dotnode and Square Enix, and it was an episodic video game that followed 2 characters. One of them is Max Caulfield, and Max is able to manipulate and control time, and her best friend slash love interest, Chloe Price, who is just a little baddie, and I love her. So I wasn't sure how they could artistically work the game's mechanics into a graphic novel format, but I was wrong. It is so well done. Both the art and the writing perfectly encapsulated the charm of the game. And Chloe and Max's relationship in here and what happens to them, I'm sad, but I'm also really happy with how it ended, and knowing that there are 2 more graphic novels at least out in this series makes me want to pick them up immediately, because the ending in this, oh my god, it really broke my heart. And I have already put volume 2 on my wish list because I am loving Life is Strange again. Also, if you didn't see, I did post a vlog where I read books that reminded me of the video game Life is Strange, not necessarily direct sequels or inspirations, but books that had a similar vibe. So I will leave a link up above to the vlog of that. But yeah, 5 stars, the first 5 stars of the month. Loved it. The next book I finished was another manga. This is Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it is written and illustrated by Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, and it is essentially just the manga format of the anime of Neon Genesis Evangelion. So if you don't know what Neon Genesis is about, it follows a futuristic world where the characters are living in a city called Tokyo 3, and mankind is on the brink of an apocalypse because they are constantly being attacked by these things called the angels. In order to save mankind and defeat the angels, there is this kind of like experimental division of the government that is essentially forcing kids to control these mecha robots, and through using these Evangelions, using these mecha robots, they are kind of able to fight and defeat the angels that are attacking Tokyo. So again, probably another biased read. I did give this 4 stars because I don't even remember reading this manga before, but apparently I did according to Goodreads. But I have seen the anime so many times that the manga and the anime all blurs together for me, and it is still so good. This is like my favorite thing ever. I don't think I will ever like not love this series. Shinji's struggles much like in the anime, are so real and granted warranted. And the way it paints his depression and his reluctance to accept his hero role is both fascinating and heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking in the show, it's heartbreaking when reading the manga, and just like knowing what I know happens in this book, I can't wait to continue. I would give this a biased 5 stars, much like how I gave Life is Strange a biased 5 stars. But because I read this 4 years ago and I gave it 4 stars, I feel like just because I didn't remember reading the manga means that the manga itself wasn't as impactful to me as I thought. So I'm keeping it at a 4 stars. I'm trusting 2017 Kelsey. The next book I read was another graphic novel. This is Lock and Key Volume 2, and it is written by Joe Hill and illustrated by Gabriel Rodriguez. Lock and Key follows this family. What are they called? The Lock. This book follows the Locke family as they are kind of survivors. Well, they're not kind of survivors, they are survivors of this horrific home invasion that killed the patriarch of the family. And they have just started to rebuild their life in this small town outside of Boston when the youngest child of the 3 discovers this magical key. Upon discovering this key, the children kind of figure out that there are other keys and they start really exploring the mysteries and horrors of the house that they are currently residing in. Although this one had less horror elements than the first one, I would definitely consider it more sci-fi. I really enjoyed those elements. Something I really appreciated in this volume, and also the first one, is how brilliantly Joe Hill is able to tie in spooky shit with realistic problems. And he also throws in like some humor here and there. Like Bo, the youngest child, is absolutely hilarious. The backstories in this novel were not as developed as in the first volume, but I still liked how we had these small glimpses into the past, and we are really starting to learn how evil one of the characters is. Because of this, it ends on a really bleak ending, which is great and definitely makes me really excited to pick up the 3rd volume. Rodriguez's art is so eerie and obviously adds an overall horror touch to the book. And even though I had always heard fantastic reviews for this series, I never thought that it would be one that I would enjoy, but here I am eagerly anticipating picking up the next one. I don't think I put this on my wish list, but I do need to because I really want to continue this. I am loving it. I understand everybody's obsession with this series, and I ended up giving this a 4 stars as well. The next book I read is one that I'm so excited to talk about, The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. Hear my voice there? Like, wow. I was really excited to talk about this. The Dragon Republic is the 2nd book in the Poppy War series. I think that's what it's called. The first book being the Poppy War. And this series follows a young girl named Rin who wants to escape her life that she is currently having in her small town. She has big dreams to join the military academy to avoid getting married to an older man, and through trials and tribulations, she ends up going to this academy. That's where I'll stop because the series really grows from that initial premise. Like that is the first like 1/3 of the first novel. This book series becomes this political weaving of brilliance. So as you can probably imagine, I gave this 5 stars. I was not okay when I finished this. This was honestly amazing. I was really nervous before going into this, which is why I put it off for so long, because I was really worried that it wasn't going to be as good as the first book. I was seeing people say it wasn't as good as the first book, but I should have known and trusted my gut that Miss R.F. Kuang would not let me down. She is a skillful writer. Her style is so easy to read, but every word and every moment is essential to understanding the characters, to understanding the overall plot. Nothing, and I mean nothing, should be overlooked when reading these books. The magic system is greatly expanded upon in this book, and we learn so much about characters that we've dismissed previously. Additionally, this book introduces a westernized religion and the impact that it had when it's used for colonial reign. That is something that I love to read about. Fong did so well, and I can't wait to see how this develops, especially the love romance stuff in here. I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but if you know. The next book I read for the video game-a-thon was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This book follows a young woman named August who has recently moved to New York, and she was raised by a mother who lost her brother at a very young age. So August has become very good at solving mysteries.
I just want to develop on this point because I feel like I didn't explain it properly, but August is very good at mysteries because her mom lost her brother mysteriously. Like, they spent a lot of time looking for him because they didn't know where he was. And August was brought up to help her mother in this fact. And that's why she's good at mysteries. I feel like they weren't clicking.
This helps her because one day she runs into a woman named Jane who August soon finds out is stuck from the 1970s, and so they work together to find out how they can get Jane back to her correct time period. This book, I was going back and forth between giving it a 4 stars and a 3 stars, so I really settled on a 3.5 star rating. When I was reading this book, I was immediately enamored with the idea that a character was stuck in time on the metro, subway, whatever you call it, and that specific charm and element really carried itself throughout the book. I immediately took a liking to Jane. And like August, I really wanted to solve and understand how she got stuck. I really enjoyed August and Jane's banter. I thought it was fun, I thought it was sweet, and it really added an element to their friendship. Additionally, I loved August's roommates. The little queer found family really warmed my heart, and I thought that they were as equally fun and sweet as Jane and August themselves. My main annoyance was definitely the sheer length of the chapters, which were sometimes like 30 plus pages, and it's not because I'm a lazy reader or I want to read things more quickly, but it's because the chapters themselves, the scenes within them started to feel choppy, and it did not flow in a way that was comfortable in my brain. Like the scenes would stop, there would be like a paragraph break, and like a new day would start where I just feel like chapters would have been just as sufficient. Another thing I really didn't enjoy is how things were extremely convenient to our main character. Like, I know I'm already stretching my imagination because there is a character stuck on the metro from the 1970s, but the convenience of everything working out surrounding August was far too much that it started to really bug me.
The level of unprofessionalism, far too much.
Especially the ending of the book. It was a little unrealistic. I know I'm talking about a book that is like, has elements of science fiction. The sheer amount of convenience, I'm not joking guys, was ridiculous. And then the last book I read for the video game-a-thon is The Adventure Zone Volume 4. This is Petals to the Metal? Yeah, Petals to the Metal. And this is by the McElroy brothers. So if you didn't know, the McElroy brothers started a podcast a couple of years ago called The Adventure Zone, and it completely blew up. People adored it. People started doing fan art for it. And essentially this graphic novel was born, but it is really just a novelization of their D&D campaign. So you have 3 main characters, Taco, Magnus, and Merle, and the little D&D DM who kind of interjects all the time. I think this story is so sweet. I give this a 4 stars because it was another hit for the series. Much like the other previous reviews I've done about this series, I am continually in awe at how well this series transcends into the graphic novel format. Carrie Piech's artwork is absolutely beautiful and works so well with the storyline. And as I've also mentioned before in previous videos, the Adventure Zone podcast and the plot within it always captivated me. I am utterly amazed by the talent that this family has and the world and characters that they've created through this D&D podcast. This volume had the storyline that I was waiting for. The plot made me cry my eyes out, and I stand by this. I think this is the best arc in the Adventure Zone. Maybe I might be forgetting some arcs, but this one was really good. So obviously this is a new day. I had started this video, got some mental illness situations, was not feeling it, but you know what? We struggled, we took a break, and now we're persevering. And I think that that is the most beautiful part about being a human. So let's continue with the other books I read in the month of July, the next book is Jelly by Claire Reese. This is essentially a post-apocalyptic book where a community of people who have survived this oceanic revolution, I could say, now live atop a jellyfish, and their entire world is amongst the sea, but specifically on top of this jellyfish that won't let them leave. And the story is essentially following this group of teenagers, and I think about 4 or 5 adults, as they try to go back to the shore once they see a group of humans. I ended up giving this book a 3 stars. It was a very interesting premise because I really enjoyed the concept or the idea that humans had ruined the planet so much that the ocean or the creatures in the ocean have chosen to fight back, and they kind of have to like deal with the consequences of what they've done in this like dystopian world. I like that the teenagers in the novel made comments about how the planet is essentially ruined for them and that they are the ones that kind of have to make these conscious decisions to change the planet. I was very pulled into the book at the beginning, especially because it was such an absurd concept, and Reese had a very easy writing style to get into. But my problem with the novel lies in the fact that there just didn't seem to be anything else besides this absurd concept. Aside from the very direct lines that were commenting on the overall themes of the novel, there was no actual meat to the plot, and usually I enjoy that, but I think it just was a skeleton of what it could be, and it was fairly obvious. I think were the novel to be a bit longer and have more of an engaging plot, I would have really enjoyed this. So overall, while I did enjoy the first quarter of the book, it began to really slog and lose my interest. I still think that this post-apocalyptic world was really interesting. I just wish that there was some more depth to it. I then read 4 Brandon Sanderson novellas and books in a row, so I'll just speed through them fairly quickly, especially because the novellas don't really have a lot of substance to them or a lot of things to talk about. So the first novella I read was The 11th Metal. This is essentially a short story that follows Kelsier before he ends up becoming who he is in the Mistborn trilogy. In general, gave this a 3 stars. The story was too short for me to even realize that there was a climax. And I did really enjoy this overall because it followed Kelsier, and he is one of my favorite characters from the Mistborn trilogy. But besides this being a fun little backstory to him, it didn't really offer much more than that. I next read an equally disappointing novella. This is what is it called? Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Eltania. So again, this is kind of a funny little romp. It's basically a short story that is told from the point of view of Allomancer Jack, but then there are little footnotes or corrections made by his assistant, who was kind of reviewing this manuscript and telling us the real deals, what really went on. So overall, I gave this a 3 stars. It was just a fluffy little fun adventure piece. Allomancer Jack is definitely a cheeky individual who had a pretty funny story to follow. This short story also expanded on the world in interesting ways, so I do think it is pretty relevant to the Cosmere universe, or at least the Mistborn universe. We actually learned a lot about the Kolos, which is a group of individuals in this world, and the way that the metal spikes, and expanding on what we know of hemalurgy. Overall, this was a fun thing, but again, I don't think it's that important to read if you don't really care about the backstories and the world building of the Mistborn trilogy or all of Sanderson's work like I am. Obviously, I'm reading all these novellas to be caught up with the entire universe. So for me, it was really helpful, but I don't think it's essential for other people who don't really care. Then in between that short story and the next novella, I did read the 6th book in the Mistborn series, but the 3rd book in the 2nd Mistborn. I don't think it's a trilogy because I'm pretty sure it's continuing. So the 2nd Mistborn series of the entire Mistborn series.
So after that whole spiel, I forgot to tell you that it's called The Bands of Mourning.
So this second half of the series follows 2 Allomancers, Wax and Wayne, as they essentially kind of like the Batmans of this universe. This part of the series takes place 300 years after the original Mistborn trilogy. So that trilogy essentially works as a religion in this world, and that is the part I find the most fascinating about this series. But overall, I did give this book a 4 stars. I don't really know how much I can express about this particular book that I haven't already said about the rest of the series in my other wrap-ups, but I'll try. I am continually impressed about how much this adds to the overall world. I have really grown to love this series a lot. If you saw one of my wrap-ups, I reread the first book in this trilogy because originally it didn't captivate me as much when I read it 2 years ago, but now, after reading everything and understanding how it plays into the world, I'm hooked. I've really grown to love the characters in this series, but I think Steris and Wayne are the ones that I really love. They are so different from the others, but they have so much heart, and part of the reason why I love the characters in this series in particular is because they are so humorous that it adds this fun romp to the read, and it really works as a strength for the series overall. Like I said, the world grows so much in this installment, so I can't wait to continue. I can't wait to read the 4th book whenever it comes out. I am hooked by the series. And then after that, I read the novella Mistborn Secret History, and this essentially is a huge spoiler for the Mistborn series, so I really won't get into it. I do recommend reading this particular novella after this book. I won't go too much into details. I did give this novella a 4 stars. I feel like this is the strongest story in the additional content that comes within Arcanum Unbounded. This one actually felt thought out. It actually feels important and adds value to the series, and I think if you don't read it, you're missing out on a lot of context. Again, this novella added a lot to the series, but I think way more than the 2 previous. Like I said, they help me understand the world, but I don't think that they're necessary. But I do feel like this novella is necessary, and if you're going to continue with the Mistborn series and expand on the world, then you definitely need to read it to understand some things. It made me gasp because it really did reveal how some things transpired in the Hero of Ages. I just think Brandon Sanderson is a genius, and it makes me really motivated to continue and read everything in the Cosmere universe. Next, I read another arc for the Apocalypse 7 by Jean Doucet. And again, this was another arc that just wasn't a hit. I ended up giving it 3 stars as well.
So I didn't even talk about what this book is about, but essentially it follows a group of 7 individuals who are survivors of this like apocalyptic situation that happened, and each of them wake up at different parts in the day or year or month. They can't seem to agree on what's been going on. They really are the only ones left. It seems as though overnight the animals have run rampant in the city and the greenery has grown to exponential lengths. They don't understand what happened. All they know is that they are the last ones on Earth, it seems.
I think Doucet did a very interesting job at tying the setting of the book to the premise itself. And once things started picking up around the 30% mark, I was genuinely spooked out and creeped out about what was happening in this world. Elements started to reveal themselves, and the way that those scenes were described, I was like really paranoid in my own living room. The feeling of being alone but being stalked and watched creeped me the fuck out, especially because I just moved into a new place and I'm not exactly like 100% comfortable. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought they were all really interesting and had their own personalities that they each individually felt different. Some of them took a lot of time to get used to, like one particular character that I absolutely did not like for like 60% of the book. But my biggest problem with the book is definitely its pacing. The first 100 pages were an absolute struggle to get through that I really debated DNFing the book, but I ended up pushing through and I'm happy that I did, but it was definitely like a conscious choice that I had to make. Additionally, the novel then completely flips on its head at the last 15% mark, and I'm not even sure that I really understood the ending because it happened so incredibly fast. So while I enjoyed the middle chunk of the book, the beginning and ending really flip-flopped for me, and that's why I ended up giving it a 3 stars. But now let's go on an absolute high note. This book, this is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyamedi, and oh my god, this blew my mind. So I am a part of Mel Reads' Patreon, and one of the perks of being part of this Patreon is that there is a book club every month, and one of the choices for this month was Ace of Spades. And I had heard really good things about this book before going in, but I was absolutely blown away. This book follows 2 private school students as they have been selected to be a part of their school's senior prefects. Shortly after this announcement has been made, someone who goes by Aces begins using anonymous text messages to spread rumors and secrets about the 2 characters, and these secrets threaten to turn their futures upside down. This was absolutely one of the most thrilling books I have read in a really long time. I never wanted to put this book down, and when I had to, all I could do was think about it. I don't often read thrillers, and nor do I really enjoy them, as I often find thrillers to have similar plots to one another, and I end up being able to figure them out just because I had kind of read that trope before. But this one had me for an absolute wild ride. I trusted literally no one, that being the white people, and it's so intense. The way that it tackled racism, discrimination, and the topics of eugenics blew my mind. I was absolutely rooting for our 2 main characters while absolutely being disgusted by every single white person that surrounded them. In terms of criticism, was the ending a little rushed? Sure. But the enjoyment that I felt while reading this is absolutely a memorable experience. I was tabbing lines left and right. As you see, like, I absolutely devoured this book, and I was having like visceral reactions to some of the scenes. Abike Iyamedi absolutely wrote a thriller that I think everybody needs to read, and this is literally her debut. I can't wait to read what she puts out next. I obviously gave this a 5 stars. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. The next book for the same book club was Normal People by Sally Rooney, and I want to take this time right now to apologize to all of the Citadel people who gave this 1 star. I'm so sorry, but I ended up giving this a 4 stars. This is basically just a literary millennial novel that follows 2 main characters, Marianne and Connell. They grow up in the same town, but there's similarities, and there Connell is essentially this very popular guy. He's on the soccer team. He's on some sort of sports team, hangs out with the popular kids, and Marianne is this weird loner. The two end up striking up this chemistry, and the story takes off from there. But I do want to say that this is definitely my kind of book. I think it is particular for a certain type of reader, and by that I mean readers who like slice of life stories where the characters do absolutely nothing, and Miss Sally Rooney provided. I completely understand why people don't or won't like this book. The characters continually make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and Marianne and Connell are really not the most likable people. Like, they're actually quite horrible people, especially to each other, but to those around them as well. Whatever this says about me, I did resonate with the 2 main characters, especially the older they got, and I found it to be kind of refreshing that they never changed. It felt more real to me because I don't think that everyone has these life-changing moments that completely change an individual. Sometimes you still change in small ways, but you hold the values and trauma that make you who you are. I hope I'm making sense. Additionally, Rooney has some of the most normal but beautiful prose that I've read in a while. There were some lines that I was completely transfixed by, some lines that really pissed me off, and the characters spoke pretty directly, which I think some people don't like, but I really enjoyed. I loved the format of the book. I think Rooney might be an interesting writer for me to continue reading their backlog, so I definitely want to pick up another book from her soon, and like I said, I gave this 4 stars. After that, I picked up my non-fiction read for the month. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it up above. It is all the non-fiction books that I would like to read in the year of 2020, and this is Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. So this is essentially a non-fiction novel that follows racism in America. Kendi uses the life story of 5 particular individuals to kind of navigate the history timeline: Cotton Mather, Thomas Jefferson, William Lloyd Garrison, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Angela Davis, and I think that that was an extremely interesting way to look at history in America. A lot of reviewers were marking this as a must read, and I definitely agree. Like I said, I love the format of the novel. I love that it's split into the 5 parts. Kendi does an excellent job at painting each individual period throughout these individual parts, while also demonstrating how the views of these individuals conflict with our very own knowledge about these people, and thereby making us question and wonder about our own beliefs. By additionally splitting the book into 3 schools of thought: segregationists, assimilationists, and anti-racists, Kendi is once again making readers question their previously or currently held beliefs, and I found this to be incredibly concise and accessible, and an important read that I would urge all to read, and I ended up giving this a 4 stars. Then I picked up Dare Mighty Things. This is also a part of that same playlist, but this is for the oldest owned books on my TBR. I will leave a link to that video up above as well. This book follows a group of kids who are chosen to compete in this space race. The book mainly follows 18-year-old Cassandra Gupta, whose entire life has been leading up to this trip to go to space. As the days dwindle away and time ticks forward, the stakes are rising higher than ever before, and Cassandra realizes that she will do absolutely anything to follow her dreams. So I definitely hyped this book a lot up in my head because it was recommended by Books and Lala, who you know that I take recommendations from very seriously, but this was definitely the most okayest book that I've read. I did really appreciate the diversity with the characters and the empowerment of having a young female lead really interested in science and space travel. I also really enjoyed the other characters that are there for the space competition, and I really enjoyed this competition in general because they were essentially proving to one another who was the best and who deserved to go. But I think that that's where my likes really ended. I found the last third of the novel when the rest of the characters just started dropping off, so I ended up finding it really boring, even though it was paced quickly. The first 2/3 of the novel took the time to develop the characters, develop the program, and then it just felt like they were dropping like flies in order to push the narrative. Speaking of, that really brings me to the end of the novel, which I really didn't like. I won't spoil what it was, but it felt really random. Didn't really add extra thrills to the novel, at least for me. I ended up giving this a 3 stars. Still a enjoying read, but again, the most okayest book of the month. And finally, the last book I read this month was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you don't know what this is about, it essentially follows a hobbit named Bilbo, tagged along by a group of dwarves and a wizard named Gandalf. They are going to raid the treasure of Smaug the dragon. I have read this several times in my life. The first like 3 to 5 times I've read this book, I would say I read it when I was young and in elementary school. I read it probably every year because it was the only French book at the time that I enjoyed reading, and as a young kid in Quebec, it was hard for me to fall in love with other books, and I had originally read this in French, so I knew it by heart. I was able to write book reports on it. Was it cheating? Yes. My first reread of this when I was adult was about 3 years ago, and I didn't end up really enjoying it. However, now that I've read it again 3 years later, I ended up really liking this because I essentially found the magic in it again. I do want to attribute this to 2 things that I think made it feel really special. The first of which was reading this alongside an audiobook. The performance was amazing. The music, the way that the charm of the characters leaped off the page, I would highly recommend it. Secondly, I picked up the Encyclopedia of Tolkien by David Day, and I started like tabbing and writing notes on every creature or element of the Tolkien universe that appear in this book. And by doing this, I learned so many facts about the Hobbit, about Tolkien himself, the way he integrates the English language and Norse mythology. The list can go on. This experience was so magical for me and really brought back my love of the series. So I'm definitely continuing with this reread in the same way, and I gave this a 4 stars. Whew, that's it. That's all of the books I read this month. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you've liked them, if you hate them. I always like to know what other people think about the books I read. That's why I'm here. If you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I always leave a link to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram down below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell if you would like to support my channel. It always makes me feel really happy. And that's it. I am fed up of filming. I don't know how to end these things, so I guess I will see you next time. Bye!